My name is S.E.A. I'm a 19-year-old activist based in Manchester. So a little bit about me, I'm from the Manchester Youth Council and I also work with Youth Focus Northwest. So I'm the Greater Manchester steering rep for Youth Focus Northwest and I'm a former member of Youth Parliament for Manchester. So the reason I'm here today is to talk to you all about carbon literacy. So what is S.E.A? We started S.E.A, Start Environmental Action, because we wanted to engage young people in environmental issues in the lead up to COP26. S.E.A involves 6 videos of young people like myself talking to you about different issues such as carbon literacy, sports and fast fashion. Education is a massive part of climate change. So for example, carbon literacy today, we're going to be talking about lots of jargon words and lots of knowledge, and this can be complicated for some young people, but we will be going through it slowly and explaining it all step by step, so you don't need to worry about it. The first part is the icebreaker. I want you to all think about what you know already about climate change as a whole. What do you know and what do you don't know? It's really important to assess what you already know before you start to build on your current knowledge. So grab a piece of paper or a whiteboard and write down a table of things you know and things you don't know. So what is carbon literacy? Well, carbon literacy is having the awareness and the capacity to impact human changes and behaviours. So today we're going to be learning about this in more detail and thinking about what we can do in our daily lives to make a difference and help the environment. So things like greenhouse gases. People talk about them all the time and people don't actually understand what they are. So a greenhouse gas is essentially something, that's a gas, that absorbs infrared radiation. The issue with greenhouse gases is that they try and leave the Earth's atmosphere, but they're reflected back, making the Earth hotter. This in turn makes things worse for the planet because you lead to things like ice caps melting and sea levels rising. A couple of other things you might have heard about are carbon net zero targets and carbon footprints. Carbon footprints are, so for a person, it's all the carbon usage you have in a year or in like a life. So you can go online and simply find out your carbon footprint to see how much carbon you've used up this year. So things like trips abroad, how much fuel and carbon that wastes, things like using buses, local transport, everything uses carbon, and it's good to assess how much you've used. So for example, if you're vegan or vegetarian, already your carbon footprint might be smaller because you're already using less carbon consumption. With carbon net zero targets, that's what a lot of companies are trying to do to make sure that they are being eco-friendly. So for example, in Manchester, we've set a carbon net zero target of 2038. That means that all the carbon we take in, we should also be taking out, if that makes sense. So it all cancels out. So there are different ways you can offset carbon. So companies choose popular things like planting trees, using different materials to create things, and also using electric cars, for example. These are things we can do in our daily lives. So one issue we have in the world is deforestation, and what some companies do to make up for that, especially toilet tissue companies, they say that for every 1 tree they cut down, they'll plant 3 more trees. So that's a way of trying to reduce the impact of carbon and the climate change that we're seeing today. So there are a lot of keywords and comparisons thrown about, and people don't necessarily understand the difference between global warming and climate change. Global warming in particular refers to the Earth's average surface temperature, and climate change is more about the broader long-term effects on the Earth's weather and climate. So with global warming, it's not necessarily a natural cause. So people's argument towards climate change is that these are all natural occurrences and that the Earth should be getting hotter because over time it's supposed to, the temperature goes up. But in actual fact, this is not actually true. So like I explained before about greenhouse gases, we are creating more greenhouse gases than we should be right now in extraordinary amounts. So things like using more cars, for example, everyone has a car, people are buying more fast fashion things, so there are more deliveries being made. So these kinds of things, factories producing pollution, these are all contributing more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, like carbon dioxide, methane, fluorous gases. So because these gases are now in the atmosphere, they can't leave the Earth's surface because of the whole CO2 layer, the CO2 layer around the planet. So they're not escaping and they're being radiated back onto the planet, making the planet hotter in turn. And so this is not a natural occurrence because we as humans are creating more gases, and these gases aren't leaving anymore, making our planet warmer. So if you imagine a potato covered in tin foil put on a barbecue, and that heats up the potato more because all the heat is kept inside it. That is like the Earth. The Earth is the potato and the tinfoil layer is the CO2 and all the gases keeping inside, and obviously the barbecue is the sun. So clearly the potato is getting really, really warm, and the more gases we're producing, the more heat that's coming out on the tinfoil and being reflected back in. That is what's happening to our planet, and that is what is not natural, because if we were naturally becoming warmer, it would be at a much slower pace and it wouldn't be a direct cause of our emissions like greenhouse gases. So we've talked about greenhouse gases, but they also have a massive impact on our weather. So in the UK specifically, we are seeing significantly more erratic weather than usual. For example, heat waves in April and rain in August. So things like that are happening all over the world and not just in our own country. So for example, Jakarta, which is the capital of Indonesia, is expected to be flooded by 2050. So Indonesia's taken the decision to move their capital city. They're literally building a brand new city to make their capital. And as the UK, we're an island. So the effects of sea levels rising is a massive concern for us. And if we were told tomorrow that London would be flooded and we have to build a new city, that would cause an uproar, understandably. These are small things that are coming on the horizon for other countries and will soon be coming for our country since we live on an island. The greenhouse gases are causing many issues in the environment. The biggest causes of climate change are burning fossil fuels, deforestation, livestock production and industrial processes. But it shouldn't be all doom and gloom because our actions do have an impact on the environment, and this can actually be positive too. So things like using more eco-friendly, sustainable processes, being flexitarian or vegan, or choosing to shop secondhand, for example. These are all things we can do to combat the changes we are making in the environment. So carbon literacy amplified, it's not just the UK which is undertaking a carbon literacy. There are so many things happening across the world with carbon literacy. But where did it all start specifically? It began in Manchester, and it started with a group of young people who wanted to make sure that people were educated on carbon literacy and what it was about. So in Manchester specifically, there are a lot of local youth groups that are getting involved and learning about carbon literacy and wanted to become carbon literate. This means people who understand what carbon literacy is and are actively using their education to impact other young people. The whole point of carbon literacy is that every citizen has undertaken the education and understands what they can do to help save the environment. It's accessible to every person who lives, works and survives in the environment. So that means every citizen in Manchester, and this is actually launched internationally now. So with our help and with other young people, we're hoping to spread this message to as many people as possible so they understand what they can do to help save the environment. The whole point of becoming carbon literate is understanding the impact we've made in the environment and understanding the position we're in now, because if we don't understand where we are now, we don't understand where we are going to go and how we can make a difference. Individuals are a massive part of carbon literacy. Individual impacts can and do make a difference in the world. We need individuals to work on projects and campaigns, and when individuals work, they can work with other people, and this creates a collaborative approach to projects. If it wasn't for individuals, then we wouldn't have ripple effects. So a lot of people who talk about the climate change issue say that as an individual, if I give up meat, for example, that's going to make no difference because I'm not a corporation who's producing so much plastic waste, for example. But our response is that every person makes a difference on the planet. That is the whole point. Even if you turn vegan, even if you decide to shop secondhand clothes, even if you decide to bring your reusable water bottle to work one day, that all makes a difference in the Earth's atmosphere and makes a difference in terms of the choices that you're making as a person. So the key values of equity and fairness are really important and are really key in underpinning carbon literacy values, and if we don't have these values shared together, then we can't impact the world together. So now you understand a little bit more about carbon literacy. The whole point now is to take action. Carbon literacy is about educating you and then others to take action and take what you've learned and put it into the environment. So now I'd like you to think about what you've learned and think about one individual goal for yourself that you're going to set as a personal target. And then you can think about one individual goal for your team or your community group or school to think about as a target. So for example, you could set a goal saying, I will use my reusable water bottle every day when I go to school or work. And your group target could be, my entire class will have a meat-free Monday, so we make sure that we're using less carbon emissions for the environment. I'd like you all to look at your icebreaker that you had from the beginning and look at your chart. Is there anything that you've clarified that you didn't understand before? And what you understood before, is there anything you can now add to that table? Think about what you've learnt today and take to social media and share your individual goal or one thing that you've learnt today simply. You can share this via the hashtag #SEAWork and tag in Youth Focus Northwest with it. And if you haven't already, please check out the other 5 videos in the SEA programme to further educate yourself on different issues like sports and climate change and fast fashion. And also see below for links to projects that you might be interested in if you're interested in carbon literacy. So the carbon literacy project that started in Manchester helped us with all this information, and they've got so many free and educational resources online available for anyone to use. So we'd obviously like to give them a thank you for letting us use their resources. And obviously, thanking them for starting this project, because if they hadn't begun this project, we would never have become carbon literate, and we wouldn't be able to share this message with other young people who would love to get involved with the environment. And it's the small differences that really matter at the end of the day. So thank you very much.